Hey everybody, I'm Derek, and this is my video presentation my video response to the prompt. So again, the prompt is, which of the following was a greater trigger to the evolution of complex human societies? Was it the agricultural revolution? Was it the rise of cities? Or was it the development of writing, and why? So here's my basic argument. Here's my answer to the question, to this question. In my view, the agricultural revolution was more of a trigger to the development of complex societies than was either writing or the rise of cities. Writing and the rise of cities, I think, are better viewed as characteristics of the development of most complex societies. Now, if you're arguing that that more advanced religion, writing, art, administration, etc., was triggered or was in a sense predicated on the rise of cities and the development of writing, that would seem to make sense. So, in other words, if you're defining a complex society as like a very complex society, that's akin to what we see in the 20th or 21st century in, let's say, the developed world. So if you're defining it that way, then I think it makes sense to say that to a certain extent, that kind of society is predicated on or triggered by, certainly writing and the development of cities to an extent as well. But it seems that agriculture is always the first cause of the first, traces of a complex society. So the first traces of a transformation towards a more complex society, I think is found in the agricultural Neolithic, revolution. So in explaining my thesis, or based on my answer to the prompt, the first thing I want to address, the first thing I think I need to address is, what is a complex human society? How do I define a complex human society? So I think a complex society is made up of a few different components. The first one is large-scale agricultural development and also animal domestication, which leads to a surplus of food, which in turn leads to the specialization of labor. So we have agricultural development, we have labor specialization. Also, complex societies are inevitably characterized by complex hierarchies, aristocracies, castes, just inequality in general, social and economic classes, gender hierarchies. Complex human societies are also typically larger societies than the kin groups that characterize the Paleolithic era. In other words, the range of people that have some sort of connection to one another, either through religion or trade or something else, tends to be larger in a complex society. And also, those people tend to have a common identity, so they identify as a part of the group that is the complex society, whether it's a city-state, a territorial state, a nation, in more of a modern context or whatever. Lastly, these complex societies need more complex rules to kind of hold everything together. The development of laws to create stability and to create at least a veneer of fairness. So how do writing and cities fit into all this? Well, writing, in my view, came about to deal with the problems or challenges created by the agricultural revolution and the various characteristics of complex society that soon followed. It talks about this actually in page 33 of the Wisner-Hanks text. What it said, I'm paraphrasing, but essentially the authors say that writing was invented to record taxes, inventories, and payments. In other words, writing was invented to properly administer the activities of a more complex society. Also, agricultural communities are necessarily more sedentary, stationary communities than foraging communities. The point of agriculture is creating a surplus of food that enables some people to engage in daily activities other than finding food for themselves. And certainly it's not the point of the agricultural revolution. The point of switching over to agriculture isn't to enable people to work less hard, right? To make their lives easier, as Dr. Barnes has pointed out, and some of the texts and articles have pointed out, life in agricultural society tended to be harder. People tended to work longer hours compared to what it was like in a foraging community. And so anyway, with this surplus of food that's been created through a lot of hard work, the only way to take advantage of this newfound food surplus is to reside in or around the village, the town, the city-state, the territorial state, which meant that there was going to be a tighter concentration of people in a more defined space. So my point is, to kind of tie this together, writing and tighter concentrations of people, which can be characterized in some cases as, quote, cities, are characteristics of complex societies, not igniters, not initiators of complex societies. One other point. So I think it doesn't matter, at least for the purposes of this question, if agriculture came before herding or animal domestication, right? As is argued in the Communities piece that we read by Bogard and the Pastoralism piece by Outram, or if it's the other way around, animal domestication came before farming, or even if they developed concurrently, basically simultaneously. Even if a person disagrees with both articles and subscribes to the old view that herding came first, farming came second. Agriculture, I think, still serves as the spark that ignites the fire of complex society and its specific characteristics, such as writing and cities. So in summary, let's go back to the question, which asked about, which used the word trigger. So in the question, Dr. Barnes asked, what triggered complex societies? Again, farming, I think, is the greater trigger because farming creates the initial possibility of complexity. And certainly it's no surprise that where farming was invented, complexity soon followed. Okay, thanks for listening.